कपिल आपको एक माइक म्यूट पे डालना पड़ेगा अपना, उसका वॉल्यूम लो करना पड़ेगा। So, very good afternoon to all of you. I am CA Gaurav Garg and welcome to the Zoom meeting on very interesting topic, India's new labor codes, practical insight from our dear friend CA Kapil Goyal ji, who is running and who is a chartered accountant and as well as doing HR consulting. He has got Intero Solutions. He is a founder to Intero Solutions who is into the HR practice. He has got overall 24 years of experience. Very warm welcome, Kapil Bhai. And though the labor law, they used to be 29, from 29 now they are four only. There is a big impact on cost and compliances. I think Kapil is still facing some issues. Kapil, are you there?
Yes, yes, I am here.
Okay. So let's hear to Kapil what Kapil has to say on the labor law. And if you have any questions, you can please share in a chat box. And one by one, we're going to take up all those questions. Uh, Kapil ji, over to you.
Thank you, Gaurav, for giving me this opportunity and to mainly discuss the labor codes with the finance HR fraternity across India. And I'm really thankful for giving me this chance.
Kapil,
So,
आपका वीडियो
I-
we are not able to see you.
just a second, just give me 1 minute.
I have received WhatsApp from one of my friend, वो कह रहे हैं कपिल मुंह दिखाई लेते हैं क्या अगर उनका कैमरा। या प्लीज कंटिन्यू।
Yeah. Is it okay now?
हम्म।
Right.
आप you have joined from some another instrument also.
Yeah. I have joined. There is some issue in the camera.
Okay.
So, this discussion is about the labor codes which have recently been introduced on 21st of November. So, without wasting anybody's time, I would like to discuss just about my profile in short minutes, that how I have entered into this labor codes or labor compliance arena. So, when I started my practice, we have seen that there were not more professionals who were practicing into the labor codes or maybe the labor law compliances. So way back in 2008, when I entered my practice, so I got a chance to do the payroll compliances and other HR policy stuff. So I have faced many issues in finding good HR consultants who were giving labor law advisory. So this is how I entered into this arena to support the industry in a more professional way. And I am practicing into the labor laws for over maybe 15 years now. Actually, to discuss all the labor codes, 1 hour is not sufficient, frankly speaking. So I would mainly concentrate on the key issue that is coming up in the industry, which is the definition of wages and the questions around it. So we because 1 hour we can discuss the code on wages only. So my presentation would be more oriented towards the wages and the related FAQs on wages, because this is the pain area which industry is facing since the introduction of the notification of labor codes in November 21, 2025. So I hope that everybody should be okay with it. Gaurav?
Yes, yes. What we can
Okay.
do, अभी आपको we can hear on the wage code, and then because other three codes are also very important, we may take another session to discuss them. And I would request all the participants, आपके जो भी questions हो आप उसको please share करिए. Maybe in this session or maybe in next session we'll try to cover all the questions. It is my promise. Over to you.
Fine. So, Gaurav, if you can allow me to share my screen, sharing is off.
Just give me a minute. Sharing.
You have to make me the host.
हाँ मैं कर पाऊंगी. आप शेयर नहीं कर पा रहे?
It is saying host disabled
हाँ
attendee
हाँ
screen
हाँ.
sharing.
Just give me a minute. Just give me.
मेरी स्क्रीन के साथ में देयर मस्ट बी 3 टैब्स टू मेक मी होस्ट.
नहीं नहीं, एक मैं दे रहा हूँ आपको जस्ट. एक्चुअली जूम भी चेंज हो गया है. नाउ यू कैन शेयर.
ओके. यस. सो इज माय स्क्रीन विजिबल?
Yes, Kapil, it is visible.
Okay. So, just to give you a background as to why these labor codes have come, because I'm sure that most of the audiences are aware about the labor codes, about the definition of wages. So, I would like to make this session more practical and more oriented towards the problems the industry is facing. So actually, during my last 3 months of or 4 months of basically practice into the labor codes, I have seen that the government now wants equality in salaries, which were not there earlier in the old labor laws. They have defined not only the wages, but they have mainly based the way all these statutory liabilities like gratuity, bonus, overtime, leave encashment, maternity, PF, ESI on one definition, core definition, which is wages. So it is very important for everybody, be it we as a practitioner, Gaurav, who are auditing several companies, be it big or big, be it small, or maybe for a HR practitioner or for a CFO or maybe somebody in accounts who is handling payroll or looking after the compliances. So the main motive which I feel the government wants now is to give equal benefits to society. Earlier, the businesses were getting richer and richer. They were not paying minimum wages to the workers, to the employees. They were not giving gratuity to many fixed term employees, to gig workers. No social security was being provided. So it is this law is an indication towards making us developed as a developed nation, as we all are planning to uh, do it by 2047. So this is a first of the initiative which I feel government has taken under the labor laws. So
I
as
think,
in
Kapil,
GST,
as you rightly said, earlier gig workers were not included. But I think the very fact the gig worker is very new addition to the workforce. So when the initial labor law came, way back 30, 40, 50 years back, at that time, nobody has heard about the gig workers or, the online platforms wherein you can get the staff on rent or on contract. So all these things are new, and now the law has been updated through new labor codes to include the new workforce which is entering into the market.
yes, and also one of the most important changes that has come in the labor codes is now you cannot split the minimum wages. Earlier, the state's minimum wages were getting splitted into basic, conveyance, HRA, or maybe special allowance. We will discuss special allowance in detail today. But the all the benefits, be it PF, be it gratuity, be it bonus, was on the minuscule component of basic. So I have seen with clients having basic as low as 20% of the gross salary, gross CTC, not salary. So although government now hasn't mentioned the CTC word, but they have defined what is remuneration. So today we are going to discuss that. So let's start. So now everybody knows that there were 29 central labor laws which were getting now which were have been subsumed into 4 labor codes. So the prominent were the Contract Labor Regulation Act, the gratuity, bonus, maternity, provident fund, ESI. So those big laws have been subsumed under the 4 labor codes, and the same is applicable from 21st November. we'll come to that question also as to the applicability and the confusion prevailing in the industry, as the central government rules have still not been notified. The codes have come in, so which date we need to take it for implementation? We'll come to that point later on in FAQs and during the discussions. So the objective of labor code, as we all know, earlier the salary definition was divided into several laws. Every act was having its own definition of salary and limits. Payment of wages act was different. Payment of gratuity act was different. Provident fund, ESI, bonus, and maternity. Everywhere the definitions were different. It is also important to notice that not all laws have been subsumed under the labor laws. We should be mindful of the fact that the state laws, like professional tax, which is applicable in many states like Karnataka, Assam, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and other states. So Maharashtra, so the POSH, which is prevention of sexual harassment, that is a separate law and that still exists. So we should be mindful of the laws which have not been subsumed. So those laws will be given precedence and will be always be considered for the matters which are mentioned in those acts, state acts. And other than that, we have to follow the labor codes. One of the most important change that has come up in labor codes is now all the institutions, all the mainly the sectors which were hitherto not included under labor codes, labor laws, now they have been included. For example, earlier the teachers were not included under the definition of minimum wages because it was not a occupation that time. Now they have removed the things, and be it nurses, be it doctors, be it teachers and other support staff of schools and educational institutions and medical institutions, everybody is covered, including charitable trust, NGOs. So the impact of the labor codes is much more wider than we think. As we have mentioned that they have introduced the definition of gig workers, so the social security will be extended to them in terms of a contribution of 1 to 2% of your profits into the government fund, which will be utilized for their welfare. The other important changes I like, they have now introduced the concept of single registration. Single return will be there. Earlier, I'm not sure how many of you were filing the annual labor returns, which are mandatory in nature, like under the Payment of Wages Act, Payment of Bonus Act, maternity, you have to file multiple returns. Now, with the introduction of labor codes, only single return will be applicable, and it's a very comprehensive return. And they, and the labor department will basically take many key details of the businesses in that return. So I am sure that everybody would like to see the mainly the format template of the return. So we can keep a separate discussion sometime else on the labor returns as well.
Kapil bhai,
New labor
one question here. See, now the labor code is basically is controlled by two governments. You will have a central government and you will also have a state government. On some enterprises, the central government would be having the authority, and on the some government, you will on some enterprises there would be a state government would be having the authority. For example, if there is an insurance company, it would be governed by the central government, whereas if there is a local factory which is manufacturing, it would be governed by a state government. So when we are talking about the return, so it would going to be a joint return, which one would be filing, which will go to both state and center, or it could be two separate returns. One for state, if state is applicable, and one for center, wherein center is applicable.
It's a very good question. The returns will be one, so they will be taking the details in that return only. It will be not be a state specific return. It will be one return under the labor code. So they will take all the information of the employees, of the salaries you are paying and the other benefits you are giving to them. to the employees. Uh, Now, the
So
voluntary coverage
will
under
it mean,
ESI.
Kapil, let's say an enterprise is having office in more than one states, maybe in Delhi, Haryana, UP, for example. So in one return, they need to put the information or share the information of all these states, or it would going to be, sorry, state-wise returns. Well, any clarity on the same right now?
Actually, you can see they have introduced the concept of appropriate government in
Hmm.
this. For governance, they have introduced appropriate government, which means that in case you have a operation in one state, then the appropriate government will be the state government. In case you have more than operations in more than one states, then central government will be the appropriate government, and central government rules will be applicable to you. So under central government's rules, there is only one return. You need to file that only.
Thank
I
you.
hope it's clear.
बिल्कुल 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 yes.
Yeah. So moving forward, they have introduced the concept of voluntary coverage under ESI. Earlier, any establishment having less than 10 employees were not required to get registered, and even they were not eligible to get registered under voluntary registrations. Now they have introduced, so anybody who is having any employee's strength less than the minimum threshold of 10 can apply now to give the benefits of medical facilities to its employees. And for some industries like hazardous industry, even if you have one employee, then ESI is mandatory to be taken. Like in income tax, or maybe the government is planning in GST also for a web-based assessments. So labor assessments will also be done online. You will get a notice online through email, registered email ID, and the inspector will take the documents online, and assessment will be done primarily online. In case it is required for anybody to come to visit your office, then they will take a permission and they can visit accordingly. So they have introduced the concept of improvement notice, and considering the attitude of the labor officers and the manner in which the assessment is done, so improvement notice will be nothing than the notice which we get in any other law. So these are some of the differences between the earlier laws, 29 laws, and the four labor codes, wherein there are drastic reduction in number of rules across all 29 laws. It is approximately now, it is only 15-20% of the rules remained in the laws. Returns have gone drastically down from 31 to 1, including the forms, registers, only 8 registers you need to maintain. So it's a simplification of the efforts by the corporates. Registration, license, and compounding they have introduced for the first time. So many criminal provisions have been made applicable for compounding. So these are the four labor codes. We will be going to discuss the first labor code in detail in today's session, which is code on wages. So they have subsumed the minimum wages, payment of wages, bonus in this law. I'll
Kapil,
share the
I
second
would
screen
request
now.
if we can
Just
also, speak little bit about the Social Security Code, because that Social Security Code, PF, ESI, gratuity, they are very closely linked to the wages. So maybe at the
sure,
end, if time permits.
sure, Gaurav. We'll discuss that. So is my second screen visible?
Yes, it is visible. Slide is overview
Okay.
code. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, overview of code on wages. So we are going to discuss the definition of wages, which is uniform in all four labor codes. Everywhere you will find the same definition, which is in section 2Y under the code on wages. The same is replicated into the other laws like code on social security also. You will find the same definition. So I'm sure most of us have read this definition multiple times, but this definition is very tricky as far as when the implementation of the salary structure comes into play. As we all are in April of the new financial year, so this is the time when you give increments to your staff, you discuss the salary structure again with all the employees. So this is the most critical one, and we should spend some more time on this definition. So if you see the first bucket, wherein the first table which says that wages includes basic pay, DNS pay, and retaining allowance. When we discuss about the basic pay, as everybody knows, they have the structure of basic. DNS allowance is generally in the government sector, and retaining allowance is generally in the seasonal industries like sugar, jute, which operates for part of the year. So, for practical purposes, I will take basic as the most common head, which is there in every company, everywhere. So, if you see the definition, it is an inclusive definition, Gaurav. As we discuss or read any definition under any other law, we should read this definition very minutely because it is an inclusive definition, which means that anything, any allowance or any payment of salary to the staff which is there in the second bucket from A to K. If you can read the second table, I will discuss that in detail sometime later. So if you are paying any component of salary which is not defined under A to K, that will be considered as part of the first bucket, which is wages. So let's say if you are paying special allowance to your employees, generally to all the employees without any bifurcation and just as a balancing figure of CTC, as we all do or were doing. So if you see from A to K, special allowance is not defined anywhere. There is a clause E that says any sum paid to the employed person to defray special expenses. So it is not special allowance. It is a payment which is few selected employees to defray any special expenses that they might incur during the course of their employment. So which means that if you are paying special allowance, that special allowance will be considered as wages, and all your contributions, whether it is PF, ESI, gratuity, bonus, maternity, overtime, everything will be calculated on that basic, including special allowance. Now we will come to the second bucket of exclusions. What is excluded and what
Gupta bhai,
is not to be considered as wages.
we have one very interesting question from Arzu. She's asking, do reimbursement those for official purposes, example training, entertainment, petrol, etc., are also part of exclusion or inclusion? So if you are giving, let's say the employee has gone for a meeting and you have paid them the reimbursement, whether it will be part of the basic pay or not. And there are two kinds of reimbursements. One is, let's say, we have designed a CTC, and in CTC, we have said you will get a reimbursement of 3,000 for petrol every month, which is fixed. The another reimbursement is, when he over travels, when he goes specifically for a client meeting, then what will happen? If you can throw some light on this.
Right. So in this case, in case we will take the second point first. In case it is for business expenses and it is a pure reimbursement which is variable in nature, because in 1 month employee might travel, in the second month he might not travel, so it is not fixed, it is a variable component. So that will not be considered as part of remuneration, be it under wages or be it under exclusions. It is an out of scope thing for the actual expenses. For the first part, where you are paying a fixed reimbursement every month, irrespective of any expenses being incurred by the employee or not, and not supported by a policy, that will be considered under the wages. So now the point is that the salary structure should be supported by a well defined policy as to what component you are paying under which scenarios. If you are paying any component which is superficious, which is not justifiable at all, like special allowance I've mentioned, or maybe reimbursements you are paying to everybody in the company without any bills and without any policy, so that will take the color of wages if you get an inspection. So wherever we are giving advisory or doing the implementation of labor codes, we are suggesting our clients that you must justify the nature of salary head you are giving to the employee. It should not be a blanket head to everybody in the company, and the percentage of that head should be on a reasonable side. What is reasonable is question of interpretation to all of us. It should, like we call it in Hindi, that आटे में नमक तो आप मिला लो, नमक में आटा मिलाओगे तो इशू है लेबर डिपार्टमेंट को, because they are more concerned about their share of, or the employee share of PF, ESI or gratuity that way. So the interpretation of reimbursements we all are going to see in the coming months as and when the assessment comes. But to my opinion, reimbursement should be genuine, it should be supported by invoices, and should not be given blanket to everybody in the company. And the amount of the reimbursement should be on a reasonable side. So that's my submission. Maximum cases, if you are giving under the policy and on a reasonable side, it will come under exclusions only to defray special expenses entailed on him, which is defined in the policy. Am I clear now, Gaurav?
Kapil ji, जैसे if you see point number D, basically this point number A to K are exclusions, and if we see point number D, it says any conveyance allowance or the value of traveling concession. So conveyance allowance is what? It's petrol reimbursement. Let's say if I give 3,000 or 4,000 fixed for conveyance, then it would be counted as exclusion from the wage and it would not be included. But yes, that 50% cap, it becomes important.
Absolutely. I was talking on the reimbursement side, but yes, if you are giving allowances, then you have very little scope to define the allowances now. Fine. Like under defray special expenses, you can have a medical allowance also being paid. If the employees are out of ESI, we can pay medical allowance also, or LTA to the employees. So you need to see for which profile of the employees or for which skill sets of the employees you can define a special allowance, or the specific allowance which you can pay to the employee, and well supported by a policy. And again, I'm insisting it should be reasonable, because of the other allowances also will have some tie to the total remuneration actually. So I will discuss the point 2YA, which is under exclusions, where they have mentioned that under exclusions you have any bonus payable under any law for the timing in force. So wherever you are paying a statutory bonus, which is to be paid for wages up to 21,000 as of now, so that will be considered under the exclusions clause. Now, Gaurav, it's a very interesting thing which I have seen during the salary structure review, that companies are paying ex gratia to their employees. Somebody are paying on a monthly basis, somebody are paying it on an annual basis, but fixed in the appointment letter. So you see, the ex gratia is not defined under A to K. So that ex gratia, which is a sort of a voluntary payment, rightful payment by the employer to employee, will become a part of wages. So every head has to be revisited, which is being paid to the employee, even on a, and the law doesn't state that only the monthly payments will be considered as remuneration and the annual payments will not be considered. So whatever is the regularity of payment or periodicity of payment, everything get will be needed to be reviewed for the purpose of this definition.
Kapil bhai, let's take one example. A lot
Yeah.
of questions are coming. Let's say there is a component in the salary structure. Let's call it a bonus. Now, we have agreed that we will pay you 10% of the entire CTC as bonus at the time of Diwali. This is one thing. And when you are paying 10% of the bonus as at the time of Diwali, then it is not coming under Part A because any bonus payable under any law for the time being in force. So one can say it is not payable under the law. It is coming out of the contract between the employee and the employer. Second case could be, let's say, under some contract, the bonus is payable. And the third case could be the bonus is ex gratia, gratuitous. The company has realized that they have made a tremendous sale and now they want to pay the bonus. And there could be performance bonus also, which they have not agreed ki what percentage of performance bonus. But yes, I felt the guy has done a marvelous job, and let's pay him a 20% bonus as performance bonus, which we never agreed. What we agreed in the employment letter that yes, if you do good, we'll give you the performance bonus. So what would be the to say that what would be the wage, because on that wage nobody is afraid of giving the wage. We are afraid because on that wage you need to compute the gratuity. On that wage we need to compute the ESI, PF and different social security obligations. So now in this scenario, what would be the wage? How you will define the wages in this case? Over to you.
Right. So, Gaurav, anything which is not mandated by the statute and which is being paid as a part of the contract, if not mentioned under A2K, will take the character of wages. So, even if you are paying bonus on the Diwali day or Diwali month, but that 10% bonus is fixed as a part of his CTC, his or her CTC, and mentioned in the letter of contract with the employee. So now the employee has right to get that bonus during the Diwali month. That will be considered as a part of wages because that bonus is not part of law. You are paying it as a part of salary to him. The periodicity is not important, but the payment is. Second, in the second case, which you have mentioned for the performance linked bonus.
So it is gratuitous. It could be a gratuitous, I realize the performance of the company is good. And we
Yeah.
keep hearing in a newspaper that, one Gujarati bhai distributed the car to everyone, but they never agreed. And sometimes, it is, let's say, a performance bonus. What is your view on that?
Yeah. So variable payments are not covered under the definition of remuneration. It is neither a part of wages nor the exclusions. So anything paid by the employer to the employee, not as a part of his employment, but as the part of performance of the employer, or maybe some decisions of variable payments being made by the employer, not as a right to the employee, will be out of the scope, will not be considered under that bucket of 100%, wherein we need to take 50% out and 50% under wages.
Correct. So let me draw the attention of all the participants. If you see clause Y, wherein wages have been defined, it says means all remuneration, whether by way of salaries, allowance, or otherwise expressed in terms of money or capable of being so expressed, which would, if the terms of employment, express or implied, were fulfilled, be payable to a person employed. So if you see, the gratuitous payment which you are making, which is not part of the terms of employment, for which nothing needs to be fulfilled by an employee, will not get covered under the definition of wages. But if it is, for example, we were talking about the performance bonus, And in if the terms of employment says ki, let's say if you are able to generate a revenue of 10 crore, you will get X amount. If you are able to generate a revenue of 15 crores, you will get a Y amount. Then it is emanating, it is arising from the terms of the employment. And because it is arising from the terms of the employment, as rightly mentioned by Kapil Bhai, it will form part of the wages. Am I correct, Kapil ji?
Yes, but in the second case, you are mentioning about the variable payments. Variable payments means the payments which are not certain. Employee can do 10 crores, cannot do 10 crores. So if that payment is variable and subject to future uncertain events being fulfilled or being not fulfilled, then it will not be considered under remuneration, under wages, or under exclusions.
Kapil ji, इस पे ना I have a slightly different view because what is mentioned is the terms of the contract. So whether can employee take you to a court or not? If it is part of the contract, if we have agreed, it may be variable, then I think it should get covered. It's a this
Actually,
is
actually, we should see column the section 2Y I also, which has mentioned any commission payable to any employee. So it's a very interesting thing that they have introduced commission also under the clause of exclusions in this. But this commission is a regular commission which is being paid every month. You have discussed that you will pay a certain amount of commission. But if you, Gaurav, why I'm saying this, if you read the FAQs issued by the government, they have issued two times. So in the FAQs, they have specifically mentioned that the variable payments are excluded from the definition of wages.
correct.
So I will share the FAQs also post seminar, post the webinar, and then we can discuss it. But what I am saying is based on the available theoretical documents available with the on the portals with the government and issued by the government.
Kapil, before we move forward, one interesting question from Kiran. Uh, Sorry, Kiran, I do not know whether you are he or she, but Kiran, who is our participant, he is asking whether expatriates will also be covered under this definition. So whether this law is also applicable of non-residents working in India.
Absolutely yes. Law has not debarred any nationality or any citizenship from the definition of employee. So it is a very wide construed definition, and expatriates, NRIs will be covered.
Okay, Kapil bhai, please proceed. Yes.
So with this exclusions, you have to. So we will do a practical case also. Just after this slide, we will be doing a practical case scenario of how the wages has to be computed. But just for theoretical purpose, you need to see the bucket from A to I till the bucket any commission payable to the employee for the purpose of calculating the 50% bucket, and anything which is over and above 50%, you need to transfer that extra bucket to the definition of wages. So all the contributions will get counted on that. So just to 1 minute I'll read the exclusions, which is the first one is any bonus payable. So if you are paying bonus as a part of CTC, that is not covered under exclusions, that will be a part of wages. If it is not part of CTC and it is payable under any law, as the Payment of Bonus Act was there earlier, now it is subsumed under the code on wages. So if you are paying it under the code on wages, then bonus will be part of exclusions. Then we have the value of house accommodation or the supply of light water. This is a in-kind benefits being given to the employees. Then we have contribution to pension and PF. It is to be also to be added to check the 50% bucket. Then conveyance allowance, LTA we have discussed. You can keep these two allowances also. Then any special expenses, as Gaurav, in few companies where I'm doing the implementation, I am reviewing that some of the employees they work from home, which is a very common practice nowadays. Maybe in IT sector or maybe in any other sector. They have a work from home allowance in their salary structure, which is a very new thing. So, for the interpretation of section 2E to YE, work from home allowance can be given to the employees who are actually working from home. Then we have house rent allowance, which is a common allowance being given already. Then G is not very practical because it is a something about the award or settlement given to the employees, which is not generally given on a day-to-day basis. Overtime allowance needs actually clarity in the rules, which we are waiting to come, because overtime allowance is not given anywhere. Overtime is a payment which is earned by the employee by working extra. It is not a monthly allowance, fixed allowance you get for overtime. So overtime allowance is not a practical allowance being paid in the industry anywhere. I haven't seen anywhere. Then commission payable to any employee. If you have a fixed commission as a part of salary, that will be considered under this clause. Then gratuity and retrenchment compensation is not to be considered under the proviso to this definition. So for calculating the bucket of 50%, we need to consider from A to I. Is it fine? Can I move forward?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So these three slides, these three presentations mention about the 50% rider, which we have discussed, that from A to I should not exceed 50% of the total remuneration. Then there is a gender rider that you cannot do bifurcation or maybe partiality with the genders for payment of salary to different genders. So you have the salary for any particular level should be uniform for across the genders. Then we have a 15% rider, which mentions that if you are paying anything in kind to the employee, like ration is given to the employee, or maybe some medical facilities of the employer, or maybe taken outside, has been given. So up to 15% of the salary, you can pay it to the employee in kind. If you are paying over and above 15%, then the extra 15%, extra over 15% will be considered as wages. So in kind, you have to check the valuation, and accordingly, you have to do the workings. So these principles we have already discussed, so I'll not take much of our time. These are just the summary of what we discussed during the last 15-20 minutes. So this is a most important slide of the entire presentation, where we are mainly we will do a small case study of how the wages has to be computed in all three scenarios. So this talks about, there are three case studies: case study 1, 2, and 3. So if you see in all three scenarios, the basic pay is different. HRA, conveyance, and other permissible allowance is also mentioned. Then we have a component called special allowance, because that's a very common allowance being paid by the companies. So I have included that. Then comes the total remuneration, wherein all the components are being added. And then we are checking the second bucket, the exclusions bucket, as to how much that exclusions will be computed based on the case studies. Then the 50% of the total salary there in column B, and any excess allowances to be transferred to the wages. So if you see in case study 1, we have basic of 10,000 rupees. Exclusions are 10,000 rupees, which is HRA plus conveyance. Special allowance, as I have mentioned, is not to be counted under exclusions. It is a part of wages only. So your wages are 10,000 plus 1,000. 11,000 is wages and 10,000 is the allowances, which is HR and conveyance. So in this case, you don't have to add anything to the wages. Wages will remain as it is, but you have to consider your liabilities towards PF, ESI, and gratuity, because in the earlier scenario, you were paying all the liabilities on the basic pay only on 10,000 rupees. But under the labor codes, now if you see the last section wherein I have mentioned wages as per the labor codes, so the basic pay will be increased by 1,000 rupees from 10,000 to 11,000 due to the addition of special allowance in that bucket. So the first case study talks about wherein the allowances are less than 50% of the total CTC of this company, of the employee, but because you are paying special allowance, the due to that the wages has increased. So we all should be mindful to the component which are there in the salary structure. In the second case study, you can see the basic pay is at 9,000 rupees. Allowances are 12,000 rupees, which is more than the total remuneration of 21,000 rupees. So if you do 50% of 21,000, it comes to 10,500 only. But the existing allowances bucket are 12,000 rupees. So you need to add 1,500 rupees, which is the difference between C and D, to the wages, to the basic. So your new revised basic will be 9,000 plus 1,500 rupees. Total would be 10,500 rupees under the second case study. Under the third case study, again, although the allowances are less than the 50% of the remuneration, but because you have basic plus special allowance, so the total wages will increase to from 12,000 to 13,000 rupees. So you need to add back the allowances or the salary payments which are not defined under A to I and include it into the wages and compute all your liabilities on that. Am I clear, Gaurav?
Yes, yes, बहुत बढ़िया कपिल भाई, please continue. I think this is most important because everything is aligned to wages. When we go to social security, when we would be covering that, we'll see everything is aligned to the wages. So yes, I think actually it's clear. Please continue.
Yeah. So on the lower section of this slide, I have mentioned that the all these liabilities, all these contributions for PF, ESI, gratuity, bonus, earned leave will also be done on the wages decided after this working is done. And the minimum wages, which is defined as per the state law, you might have heard about the latest rights being held in Uttar Pradesh, and after that UP has revised their wages, the minimum wages. So all these things are coming up across India now, and the time will come when we will see a drastic increase in the salary structures of the skilled or semi-skilled workers or maybe unskilled workers in India. So now you cannot bifurcate the minimum wage. So whatever minimum wage, let's Delhi is the highest. In Delhi, we have the skilled rate of 22,000 rupees. So that will be the minimum basic you need to ensure to be paid to the employee under basic salary.
Kapil bhai, I'm just
Central
thinking,
government,
world is
yeah,
talking about de-dollarization, which means कि dollar will lose its value, correct? And we are talking about rise in cost. So if cost in India increases and de-dollarization happens, will it mean that will apparently it means we're going to become less competitive in international market? So because our cost is going up, dollar is losing value. If it happens, dollar loses value, which means Indian products will going to become more costly when it comes to the exports, which means losing one of the competitive advantage that we have currently is cost. So our product will going to become more costlier for the European or US market.
Actually, not really. I think I will differ with this because the corporates and the factories will now have to think out of the box as to how to increase the production with the existing labor. So they will need to modernize their plant and equipments to give a better quality than earlier and to produce in bulk, wherein the per uh, item cost decreases. So they need to increase the production to that extent because labor cost in any way, even earlier also, every 6 months we have a new minimum wage law. So those were increasing, but now they have just been basically made at par with the good states or maybe with the cost of inflation or the cost of living. So that's a one step jump from of 35%. The 35% labor cost has increased in Haryana also, in UP. In Delhi, it got increased during the Aam Aadmi Party government. So the entrepreneurs should think out of the box how to increase the production and reduce the per unit cost of production. That's my take.
Okay, few questions from the participants. Let me take, you know,
Yeah.
Meeta is asking, is there any guidance on whether senior positions are excluded? I think from the wage perspective, there is no exclusions are there. So let's say if somebody is getting a salary of
Yes.
50 rupees.
Everybody will be covered under employees.
Yeah.
Everybody would be covered under employees, but they will not be getting overtime, as overtime is paid for those who earn minimum wage. So minimum wages, the workers and the skill sets are covered. So those skill sets are only eligible for overtime.
I think Kapil bhai, once you move on from a definition of worker to an employee, I think the benefit you loses is the benefits which are given in industrial relation codes. So otherwise everything remains the same. So there
Uh,
is,
Actually, in some of the cases, they have mentioned the separate provisions for workers and separate provisions for employees under the OSHW,
yeah, yeah, correct.
occupational safety health hazard, health and working conditions.
Hmm,
So
hmm.
therein, some benefits are given to employees, some benefits given to workers. So first of all, we should define who is worker and who is employee. This is a very contentious issue being faced by the HR persons as to who is a worker, who is an employee. Actually, everybody is an employee, but who is a worker? Because worker will get special benefits.
Worker will get special benefit.
Yeah.
Actually, let's say if somebody gives a car to his employee, which is part of, let's say, the CTC, then what is the value one needs to take? I think somewhere you referred 15%. So how that will happen?
Actually, valuation rules are not notified in the codes, but yes, we are expecting the same to get included under the rules. So, but as of now, since we maximum of us are in accounting profession, being CA or maybe another professional, so we need to see the cost of that car being given by the employer. As in income tax, we have perquisites valuation rules. Fine. So we are expecting some sort of broad rules being framed under the code also, under the rules also, but as of now you can safely take the cost to the employer.
Okay, I think we can proceed because the time is also running. We can proceed
Yeah.
now.
So one of the most important change happened is in full and final, which is a very much of a pain area to every HR, because within 2 days they have to clear the full and final of the employee at whatever time employee goes, be it middle of the month, be it the end of the month, or any other date. So one of the most important thing we need to notice here, that we need to pay the wages, means basic salary, not the entire component. So let's say if any employee has worked for 10 days and he or she has resigned on 11th of a month and you have accepted it, so within 2 days you have to clear his 10 days basic salary. Rest other components you can pay later on when you process the payroll on a monthly basis. And in case employee has been given some benefits like laptop or mobile or car, as you have mentioned, for office use, so and he hasn't returned, so you can safely send an email to the employee that please return these things, then your full and final date will be set. So the wages will be paid after the employee returns everything and his clearance is done. So this full and final, we have to take it from that angle, that his FNF should be done after clearance within 2 working days. One of the most important change done in labor code is they have made the principal employer responsible for all the non-compliances of the contractor. Gaurav bhai, earlier the principal employer was concerned only with PF As you have seen during audits, we check only the provident fund and ESA challans of the contractor, whether he is paying the contribution in time or not. Am I right?
Yeah, yeah.
So now you have to see whether the contractor is paying the minimum wages to its workers, whether he is paying overtime, whether he is paying gratuity, bonus, leave encashments, maternity benefits to the contract workers. In case there is any non-compliance by the contractor and you are also non-compliant, then penalty can come on you as well if contractor defaults on that liability. So it's a very important change being
One
done under the
important
labor
point,
code.
Kapil bhai, we can discuss here regarding the gratuity, which was earlier linked to the 5 years of employment, now linked to 1 year of employment. And when you have extended definition of workers or employees, because now the contract employees or contract workers are part of your employee, they are considered employee. So there is a lot of financial impact will going to come on the companies, because earlier I think institute has also released one guidance that one needs to create a provision or take impact on 21st November 2025 in books. If you can elaborate on that, if you have couple of minutes to highlight that, yes.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's a very key change done in the labor codes. And this 1 year, to correct you, this 1 year is mainly for fixed term employees. So as you have seen in the IT industry, they give the fixed term employment to the employees depending upon the project one get assigned to. So if the period of the fixed term employee is more than 1 year in the company, then if somebody leaves, you need to pay the gratuity to that employee, fixed term employee. I'm not talking about consultants, I'm not talking about contractors. Fixed term employees who are not independent and who works on your direction. Actually there is a very thin line between who is an employee and who is a consultant. So the contract and the essence of the contract, the specific nature of duties being performed by that person in your company will matter. So if you have given a fixed term employment contract to the employee, after 1 year you have to pay gratuity. If the employee is regular, as we all have seen during CA profession or maybe companies, all are regular employees. If the period of the contract is not defined, employment is not defined, sorry, so then the 5 years period, which was there earlier also, will be applicable. You don't have to pay gratuity after 1 year. If some regular employee leaves, let's say after 2 years, there is no requirement to pay gratuity to him or her.
Okay, so what will happen wherein, let's say you have a, you know, contract employees, in the sense there is a contractor and you have taken employees from them, and after every 6 months or 1 year you renew the contract with the agency. So what would be the position in that case?
Uh, those are the regular employees of the contractor. Fine. So if you are renewing every 6 months or maybe after 1 year, that those employees doesn't become your fixed term employees. your fixed term employees will be in a direct linking with you, not through a contract. So the gratuity will not be paid to the contract worker if you cancel the contract after 1 year or so, because those are the regular workers of the contractor, not you.
Okay, I think we can proceed on this, Kapil bhai.
Yeah, so I am done with the presentation on code on wages. So, in the best interest of time, we can take few queries, or maybe you can take questions from the code on social security as well.
So what we can do, if you have any questions, the participants have any question, they can raise their hand, and one by one we can unmute them and they can ask their questions to you. Uh, so I invite participants to raise their hand for the questions. Please raise your hand if you have any questions for Kapil ji. So in the meantime, let me take questions from the chat. So Rohit is asking, clarification required regarding the calculation of ESI. Now 21K or 42 will be seen for ESI applicability. I think if you can go back to your slides, Kapil bhai. तो जो एक 3 एग्जाम्पल आपने लिए थे
Okay. Okay, yeah,
उसमें
I'm opting.
so there must be a figure 21K or 42K आ रही होगी. So Rohit wants to ask for the ESI applicability what we need to see. The total remuneration or 21K. मतलब excluding, so there are certain exclusions we need to do or we need to take CTC. Correct, Rohit?
Yeah. So I'll start. Yeah, actually, this is a very common question. We are being faced everywhere wherever we do salary restructuring. So ESI earlier was payable on the gross salary, other than conveyance allowance. So now the law has changed, and under the code on social security, they have mentioned, the government has mentioned that the ESI contribution shall be paid on wages. So if, for a theoretical purpose, if the total salary is 42,000 rupees, so the basic has to be 21,000 rupees or more. So if it is 21,000 rupees, then you have to contribute the ESI on 21,000 rupees.
तो कपिल भाई आपके इस एग्जाम्पल में हम देखें जो केस स्टडी नंबर 3 है उसमें टोटल रेम्युनरेशन इज 21 एंड वेजेस एज पर कोड इज 13. तो मींस वी नीड टू पे
Right.
ईएसआई ऑन 13 एंड नॉट ऑन 21.
Absolutely.
Any other question, or let me go to the chat box and see.
Acha, one of the most important changes we are clients, and that can be done by the companies, are that many companies are paying provident fund on the actual salary over 15,000 rupees. So when you restructure the salary and you find that the increase in contributions for PF, ESI, or maybe bonus gratuity, then there is a provision in law wherein you can reduce the contribution of provident fund up to the statutory limit of 15,000 rupees. So that flexibility is available to the employers.
ओके एक और क्वेश्चन ईएसआई आई थिंक 1800 कह रहे हैं पहले मिनिमम था सो दैट मिनिमम 1800 इज स्टिल देयर और इट हैज गॉन अवे.
PF, PF tha, that limit is still there, but very soon we should listen that the government is increasing the limit of provident fund from 15,000 to 21,000 or maybe 25,000 also. So that is under consideration.
Okay. Now, Vinita, yes, please unmute yourself and raise your question, Vinita.
Thank you
Vinita
so much,
Chaudhary
sir,
ji,
for
yes.
giving this. Yes, sir. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity. Kapil sir, I have a question. As you said that now this special allowance will be the part of the basic pay, I mean the wages. So I just want to know if suppose our structure is only basic HRA and special allowance, then in this case, what nomenclature we can use instead of special allowance so that it cannot affect the wages? Or is it possible?
Virinda ji, it is possible, but as I've mentioned earlier, then that you have to see the profiles of the employees as to what is the profile, what best allowance you can give, considering the nature of employment. So let's say if employee is working from home, so you can add a work from home allowance. If the employee is out of ESI, medical allowance to him. You if the employee is coming from home to office, you can pay conveyance allowance to him, but be mindful of the reasonableness of the allowance. It should be a balancing figure. Let's say you have decided a CTC of 50,000 rupees, so you cannot say that 25,000 rupees is basic, 12,500 rupees is HRA, and remaining is your work from home allowance, or remaining is conveyance allowance. You have to see the practicality of the allowance being paid and the bucket exclusions which are there in the section 2y, A2I, and accordingly you have to decide on the reasonability and the practicality of that allowance being paid to any profile.
Sunil bhai, please unmute yourself. Thank you, Vinita ji. Thank you, Kapil bhai. Sunil
Thank you
Thakur.
so much.
Sir, same query which
Am I
Rohit.
clear?
Yeah, good afternoon,
Yeah.
sir. Sir, same query which Rohit was asking. Like example earlier in ESIC.
Hello.
Sir, am I audible?
Kapil, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, yes.
Yes, Sunil, please continue, bhai.
Powering off.
Hello, sir, am I audible?
हाँ जी बोलिए बोलिए.
Hello.
सुनील
Yes.
आप ऑडिबल हैं. क्वेश्चन पूछिए अपना. I think Sunil is not there. नीरज नीरज आ रही सुनील आ गए.
Yes, yeah, sorry, sir. There was some connection error.
हाँ बोलिए बोलिए क्वेश्चन पूछिए अपना सुनील.
सर मैं कह रहा था कि सेम जो रोहित अभी पूछ रहे थे ईएसआईसी में अर्लियर देयर वाज अ प्रोविजन दैट इफ 21,000 इज ग्रॉस you need to check that if gross is less than 21,000 ESIC will be applicable. Sir, now like example my salary is 25,000 more than 21,000 in the new code. So sir ESIC applicable होगा क्योंकि बेसिक उसमें 50% अगर 12,500 हो जाएगी तो फिर ESIC applicable ऑटोमेटिकली हो जाएगा 25,000 पे भी.
कपिल आप हैं?
मैं हूं. मेरी आवाज आ रही है आपको? कुछ नेटवर्क इशू आ रहा है.
बिल्कुल आ
I
रही है
feel.
आवाज.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sir, I was saying earlier in ESIC, if my gross salary was 21,000, more than 21,000, so ESIC was not applicable. If less than 21,000, ESIC मुझे जमा कराना पड़ता था for any work.
Right.
Now, sir, in new law, क्योंकि उन्होंने basic
Right.
चेंज कर दिया है, तो like my salary is 25,000 now gross, and इसमें basic 12,500 हो जाएगी. तो सर ESIC इस केस में एप्लीकेबल हो जाएगा न्यू कोड में.
बिल्कुल.
तो
You are
सर
right.
इसका मतलब ये है
Now
कि
we have to see the limit. हाँ.
मेरी सैलरी अगर 42,000 है, मोर देन 42,000 है तो एप्लीकेबल नहीं होगा, वरना एप्लीकेबल हो जाएगा.
देखिए बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग चीज आपने पूछी है. आप ऐसा नहीं है कि जो वेजेस है वो 50% ही रह सकते हैं. इट इज मिनिमम 50%. सो आपका अगर एम्प्लॉय है जो 43,000 पर है वो ईएसआई से बाहर है, जो 42,000 पे है उसका वेजेस 21,000 है. सो लॉ हैज नॉट restricted you to keep the basic at 21,100 also.
ओके. तो
So
सर
you
मैं
can, in my opinion,
या
if you want somebody to be out of ESI, which is on the thin line between the threshold, so you can increase the basic by 100 or 200 rupees and keep him out of that limit.
Sir, in that case, if gross salary is 25,000, can I say that 21,200 is the basic?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Law doesn't debar you to pay basic of more than 50%.
Okay, so basic more than 50%, 80-90% is fine, no problem. It should not be less than 50% basically.
You can keep 100% also. You
Okay.
can, Sunilji, you can keep 100% basic also.
But in that
Okay.
case, CTC of the employee will be increased, na sir, from company point of view, if the basic will
Absolutely.
be
तो
increased, right, sir?
सैलरी स्ट्रक्चर तो सुनील डिजाइन करना पड़ेगा. द पॉइंट विच कपिल इज मेकिंग कि 50% ही बेसिक को ऐसा मैंडेटरी नहीं है. यू कैन हैव 60% एज द बेसिक ऑल्सो. तो वो
Absolutely.
जो आपके एक्सक्लूजन्स हैं प्रोविडेंट फंड की, ग्रेचुटी की, उन सबको ध्यान में रख के वन नीड्स टू डिजाइन द सैलरी स्ट्रक्चर. आई थिंक वी हैड अ गुड डिस्कशन. क्वेश्चंस आर स्टिल pouring in. Richa Bareja ji wants to ask the question. Richa, you can unmute yourself. Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Gaurav. Good evening. Hi, Kapil sir. Good evening.
Hello,
Uh,
Richa ji.
Hi. I'll just take a short example, quoting the numbers and all so that I get the better clarity when you answer it. Let's assume there's an employee whose total CTC is 12 lakhs as per the appointment letter. Out of this 12 lakhs, 50% is the basic pay, which is 6 lakhs, and HRA is 3 lakhs, which is 25 or 50% of the basic pay again, which is a general or standard salary structure being followed in most of the companies. So out of this, only 3 lakhs is the amount which earlier used to be special allowance, and it was divided into different uh, uh, allowances, you can say, or maybe in the form of reimbursements it was being given. And let's assume there's a bucket of reimbursements which is payable or maybe gets paid on a monthly basis, but the end of the year company takes the invoices or bills just to support the reimbursement. Let's assume at the end of the year employee doesn't submit the bills, the amount automatically gets taxed. Now, in this case, whether the reimbursement becomes taxable or is paid as non taxable, but it is only the 25% amount of the total CTC. Does this automatically become included or takes the color of the wages if employee doesn't submit the bills? Policy is there. Till now, let's assume there was no policy, but we
I think you
just
need to be short in your question, otherwise, it will take a lot of time. Be quick.
so the
Give
only
me,
query is,
yeah.
let's assume if employee doesn't submit the bills and but the reimbursement amount is fixed at the beginning of the year, that okay, employee has said that I'll give 10K for the fuel, 10K for the driver, 10K for the attire. So 30,000 is fixed at the beginning of the year, or at the end of the year he has to submit the bills, and if bills do not get submit, the entire reimbursements which are paid on monthly basis get taxed. There is tax deduction
रिचा
on
जी,
any
हमने
of them.
ऑलरेडी आपका क्वेश्चन क्या है? रीइंबर्समेंट विल फॉर्म पार्ट ऑफ एक्सक्लूजन,
Exactly.
है ना?
Does it become part of the wages for the purpose of
हाँ,
PF and
बिल्कुल बनेगा.
or not?
दिस we have discussed this. It will form. Correct,
Yes.
Kapil?
Actually, Richa ji, just to answer you quickly, आपका कोई भी कंफ्यूजन हो, आप A to I को एक बार खोल के रीड कर लीजिए. अगर आपका कोई भी अलाउंस A to I में फॉल नहीं कर रहा, वो उसको ऊपर लेके जाना पड़ेगा आपको.
Okay. Okay.
बहुत
Doesn't
सिंपल है.
matter whether it is taxable or
हाँ
non-taxable.
हाँ हाँ
Okay.
हाँ, टैक्सेबिलिटी तो अलग एक लॉ है, इनकम टैक्स एक्ट. उसमें आप
Hmm.
ज्यादा अच्छी प्रैक्टिस कर रहे होंगे इफ यू आर अ फाइनेंस
Hmm.
प्रोफेशनल. जो
Hmm.
लेबर लॉ के लिए ए टू आई देखना है, और अगर वो उसमें फॉल नहीं कर रहा तो वो सीधा ऊपर जाएगा. कोई और जगह ही नहीं है उसकी, अनलेस
Okay.
वो आउट ऑफ
Okay.
स्कोप हो. जैसे मैंने आपको बताया था, कुछ चीजें आउट ऑफ स्कोप है. ईएसआई, जैसे ईएसआई एम्प्लॉयर है, वो इसमें
Hmm.
लिखा ही नहीं है. दैट इज आउट ऑफ स्कोप.
Okay. Hmm.
तो कुछ पार्टिसिपेंट्स पूछ रहे हैं कि क्या हमें रिकॉर्डिंग मिलेगी. रिकॉर्डिंग आपको बिल्कुल मिलेगी. आई वुड बी अपलोडिंग टुडे सेशन ऑन माय यूट्यूब चैनल, तो आप वहां पे जाके इस रिकॉर्डिंग को देख सकते हैं. सो लेट्स टेक द लास्ट क्वेश्चन बिफोर वी से गुड बाय टू ऑल ऑफ यू. नीरज डावर जी, यू कैन अनम्यूट योरसेल्फ, नीरज, एंड आस्क योर क्वेश्चन. नीरज डावर.
My question is related to what Kapil ji said कि भाई अगर किसी की let's say wages turns out to be 50,000 rupees, we can still as an employer contribute PF at 15,000 rupees, and that's the employer's part. Even the employee part can be as up to 15 can be reduced to 15,000 rupees percentage, and whether that can be changed at our will whenever we want, we can keep changing this figure, or it becomes fixed.
No, you can reduce the employee's contribution also on 15,000 rupees, and you can pay the difference of employee's contribution as voluntary contribution to PF. Nobody restrict you from that.
Okay. And suppose we do pay on 15,000 this month, can we change it to 20,000 next month, or is there a that it becomes fixed forever?
Actually, PF department checks the uniformity of allowances, the PF being paid on a salary. So this aspect is not a flexible one that you pay 20,000 on one day and 15,000 on the other day. You have to follow a rule, otherwise you will face issues during PF inspections.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you everyone for joining in today's session. Thank you, Kapil Bhai. Hope you also enjoyed delivering the session. It was very interactive. So we would be keep calling you. अभी हमें थोड़ा और deep dive करना है labor codes में. So maybe next week or next to next week we will again have Kapil Goyal ji based on his timeline. जब भी हमें time देंगे, we will again have Kapil Bhai to discuss more provisions about the labor code. And yes, we will be uploading this video recorded session on the YouTube channel. Thanks, Kapil. If you want to say something in a minute, please over to you, and then we'll close it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everybody, for giving your precious time, and thanks, Gaurav Bhai. I really enjoy your company. So really, it was my pleasure too.
Thank you, Ji. Bye bye. Take care. See you soon.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Gaurav.